Good afternoon, everyone. 4:30 on a Monday edition of On Cue. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones, on this 17th of November, 2025. Hope everyone had a wonderful sports weekend and you are enjoying your Monday, as we like to dub it, table it, call it, pronounce it, a Man Up Monday, or as the faithful listening audience already knows, it is indeed a Man Up, Mentiroso, Lunes, Lucador de Radio, Manolo, Monday edition of On Cue. All right, we've got obviously a substantial amount of NFL to get into on this Monday. Lloyd Vance going to join us around 5:15. We'll take you up to 6 o'clock straight up. Don't forget, we're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase of Fresh Roasted Coffee. Get ready with tea, Three Brooks Bourbon, and Play It Again Sports. 2 locations in South Jersey, among the tri-state area. So what did we learn once again in the NFL over the weekend? That as much as we want to believe we know exactly what's going on with this league, as much as we want to wax poetic about what we know, what we believe to know, we know absolutely diddly. Another weekend in the books. Obviously, you got the Monday night affair tonight between the Dallas Cowboys and the Raiders. That's going to be a friggin' snooze fest. But look, man, you go back and what did we see again over this weekend? We saw teams that we were thinking that we thought were maybe ready to take that next step. We thought they were legit. And now we're looking at some of these teams and we're thinking they're frauds. We've got some massive injuries to get into that affect draft capital, if you will, for the Atlanta Falcons, with Penix going down. We have to get into Lane Johnson going down. We've got to get into the madness that was some of these games yesterday. And oh, by the way, not a bad run of picks by yours truly. So there's going to be a very limited edition from myself on Manning Up, period, because I did exceptionally well with some of my picks. The ones that you guys decided would basically just take out of context and just whip them around and try to get me all discombobulated. Not having any of it. But you got to start Sunday Night Football, because last night, once again, the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles flat out got bailed out. They not only got bailed out by the referees last night, but they got bailed out by the incompetence of Dan Campbell. The team themselves, they won a friggin' football game in spite of the fact that Nick Sirianni once again shows you he sometimes doesn't even know what the hell he's doing. So in a game in which the Philadelphia Eagles eventually, a snooze fest. Oh, by the way, I actually picked them on Friday's show. They beat the Lions 16-9, a game in which Dan Campbell did not help out his offense, a game in which Dan Campbell did not help out his quarterback, a game in which Dan Campbell decides every other friggin' possession, we're going to go for it on 4th down, and it blew up in their face. The Detroit Lions were just absolutely rattled last night. And give credit where credit is due with the Philadelphia Eagles, because their offense still stinks. I mean, their offense is just not sexy at all. But if we're going to sit here and rip on teams like Denver that has zero offense, that, oh, by the way, just ended the Chiefs dynasty and they're running the AFC West because of their defense, then you got to give credit to the Philadelphia Eagles, because defensively, they were able to really disrupt Jared Goff. Defensively, they were able to make a lot of plays, get the Detroit Lions off the field, clean tackles, flipping the field, stopping them on multiple 4th down attempts. I mean, if you're a Lions fan and you're watching that game last night, look, I know everyone wants to get into that last possession where they called the pass interference call on the DB, fresh set of downs, competing with A.J. Brown. Listen, fine. And I think I told you, too, A.J. Brown was going to get about 10 or 11 targets, which he did. The Detroit Lions did not lose that game last night because of a no call. And in this regard, a bad call. The Detroit Lions did not lose that game because of that pass interference call late. They didn't. They didn't lose the game because of that. They lost the game because Dan Campbell is a goofball. The same thing I told you on Friday's show on Q. I said, be careful now. Be careful if you're the Lions and Dan Campbell. Which team is going to be aggressive at which point, which junction of the game, as in it's going to bite them in the ass? And it did multiple times last night. Dan Campbell going for a fake punt early in the game when you're down 3-0 reeked of desperation. Absolutely reeked of desperation. I mean, that play was blown up from the get-go. They didn't fool anyone. Eagles punt. Lions have a bad pick, interception. You get the field goal. The Eagles did. They go up 3-0. You get the punt, and then another punt, and then another punt. And that's kind of how the first quarter went. Then you get a situation where the Lions defensively forced the Eagles a quick 3-and-out. And this is early in the second quarter. Early in the second quarter with an offense that scored 44 against the Washington Commanders. And what do the Detroit Lions decide to do? Fake a punt. Fake a punt down 3-0. I mean, so that's check mark number one. Then they hold the Eagles again to 3-and-out. They get the ball back. Down 3-0. You're on your own 43, and it's 4th and 2. And what does he decide to do? Let's run it for no gain on 4th down. There you go. That's another failed attempt. Eagles get a field goal at 6-0. Then the Lions score a touchdown. Finally, they wake up. They missed a PAT. Eagles come back, score again. Now it's 13-6. And I believe the game changes because of that missed extra point. Because at 13-7, maybe you're not inclined to go for some of these 4th downs and try for a long field goal. So 13-6, third quarter, here we go. 4th and 5 from the Eagles, 32. You can kind of live with that tough field goal, but again, the incomplete pass. Jared Goff not on the same page with Williams. Then they force another 3-and-out. They're still down in this game 13-6. And what do they do again? Another possession. They're running the ball. But from just an inexplicable reason, you've got a 4th and goal from the Eagles' 3-yard line. I believe if the game is 13-7, he's more inclined to go for the field goal. But at that point, the way the game was unfolding and you couldn't do anything your prior 4th down tries and attempts, why not take the points? You take the points as 13-9 and you forced another punt. Then you get the friggin' ball back. So let's just say, argument's sake, they're down 13-9. You got the ball again, 4th and 3 from the Eagles 45. And again, you're not even running the ball. Mind you, this is after a 33-yard pass play, a 7-yard runoff tackle. And what do? Throw, and throw. And then with all that being said, in a game that you're just being dominated, like so disruptive was that Eagles defense on Jared Goff, just bumping him off his spot. The only weapon was the kid Williams, who was just unbelievable, like a little joystick playing an arcade game. You force a couple more punts because the Eagles offense couldn't do anything in the second half. What else is new? You get the ball back and you kick a field goal. How do you kick that field goal? Because Nick Sirianni decides up 16-6, I'm going to be friggin' cute. 4th and 1 on my own 29. You got to be kidding me, man. The way your defense is playing, what the hell are you thinking? Punt the friggin' football and let them just go and close it. Why do you have to make it a little more dicey? Now, the Lions turn around and they get a field goal, but again, they still had to be able to stop the Philadelphia Eagles late, and the Eagles couldn't do it as they ran out the clock and picked up a 1st down and chewed up yardage, 6 plays, and there you go, 16-9. So not only was Nick Sirianni goofy last night, but Dan Campbell did not at all help the Detroit Lions out. He didn't help his quarterback, who was under duress. Jalen Hurts didn't have to do a lot last night. Saquon Barkley didn't have to do a lot last night. I don't walk away from that game saying that either of those teams is world beaters, But ultimately, the Eagles are what their record is, and that's 8-2. And they're right there in the NFC. Now, I'm going to tell you the team that's friggin' legit. And this will be my first man up on a Monday. This will be my first, probably not going to be my last, but this will be my first man up on a Monday. The Rams are legit. Now, I came on the air Friday, and I even said it on BYP. Give me Seattle. Give me slinging Sammy Darnold. And what does he do? He promptly goes out. Now, 2 of those balls were not his fault, but he throws 4 picks. But their defense keeps them in the game to some extent. And I love the fact that defensive players were sticking up for Darnold. He didn't have a very good game, even though he had such a clean pocket. He wasn't even touched. And it's not like Stafford blew you away. That was a good defensive affair with some turnovers and field position yesterday, but they still got the ball back late in that game, making some stops when they had to. And then unfortunately, you're asking a kicker to kick a really friggin' long field goal. And I just knew, Darnold prior to, you had 5 seconds to go. And if he hangs on the ball for one more second, they don't even get that play off. They don't even get that completion with the timeout for 1 second. But that 61-yarder was tough. That was a tough ask. But the Rams got the win. They're 8-2. The Rams right now, I believe, are the most complete team in the NFC. I might even argue they're the most complete team in the NFL. I can make the case for them. The Bears got a win. Tampa, they just did not even show up against Buffalo. You've got a lot of stuff going on in the AFC that I want to get into. But again, on a Monday, we man up, Manolo time, Locador de Radio. Man up Monday. Let me hear from the Mentiosos. See what you guys have to say on this Monday. Man chimes in. Manolo time it is. New phone, who this, a.k.a. He 12 Man, a.k.a. Heisman, a.k.a. Steeler Vince, a.k.a. now Duval. Got a man up and say Sanders didn't play well, but he showed why some of us think that if you give him reps and let him practice with the best talent, maybe they'll be okay. I got some thoughts on that. We're going to get into a little later on, as we like to say in the program. In other news, Duval, how about them Jags? Big AFC win. I never want to hear about Justin Herbert being elite ever again. I've never said Justin Herbert was elite. That was a nice win by your Jacksonville Jaguars. By the way, Trevor Lawrence still stinks. I'm just being honest. He's not a good quarterback. I have no idea what's going on with the Chargers. That was a humbling loss. I mean, Herbert did not play well. Jacksonville actually got to him. They sacked him a couple times, but just that game was out of reach. And then Harbaugh made the right decision. Let me get them all off the field. Ranking the Jalen's on the Eagles: Carter, Phillips, Hurts. Well, that's good to hear, Luca Brazzi. I'm glad you chimed in with something of substance on this friggin' Monday. Sanders got thrown into the fire yesterday. Tough spot. Will Sanders get first-team reps this week? Will he get a shot at redemption? Sanders did not look good yesterday. So I'll address a little more of this with Lloyd, but that's one of the other stories to come out of yesterday. Obviously, the MVP race, the quarterbacking play of some of these quarterbacks, precipitous drop. Obviously, Sam Darnold, Stafford, Josh Allen probably jettisoned those guys, right? I mean, that's 6 touchdowns yesterday total. He was just absolutely brilliant. I mean, Josh Allen is just an incredible quarterback. Superman's return just in time for the Buffalo Bills. But as far as the Shedeur Sanders situation yesterday, and yes, I'll get into Penix being hurt. And of course, Lane Johnson's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks after suffering a Liz Frank sprain. That's a big loss for the Philadelphia Eagles. But as far as the Shedeur Sanders, so, flipping through and seeing Gabriel go down, get concussed, and then Sanders has to come out. Now, we can sit here and debate all we want if this kid was put in a bad spot. I thought maybe the Raiders game was going to be the spot for him to get his first career start. He comes into a game against a divisional opponent, still a veteran team in Baltimore. The kid looked a little rattled. His offensive line did not help him out. He was running for his life. He didn't play well. He didn't. So now you've got this whole argument debate going on about reps. And I thought it was perfectly stated by Luke McCown, who tweeted out, former fourth round pick here, former journeyman backup here. There's a massive misunderstanding about how an NFL practice is structured. The only time mid round pick rookies and backups get meaningful reps is in training camp, and they are never with the ones unless you are competing or starting the next preseason game. He went on and on and on to talk about the backups. He was talking about the probability of being, a backup, limited, no reps, the expectations, all of that. And it's so easy for us to come on today and scream at the mountaintop, they're screwing the kid, the kid's set up to fail, the kid set up to fail, or the kid wasn't prepared, the kid's sitting there on the bench by himself. It's all about him, him, him. There's such a school of thought and two narratives everyone wants to push, and agendas and coins and just layers to this. But the eye test to me, this kid needs to get out of Cleveland, period. Any quarterback. The fact that the head coach confirmed the second half of the game was Sanders' first snaps with the starting offense since he was drafted by the Browns, everyone wants to grab that and say, oh my God, you are setting this kid up to fail, right? But again, reps help, period. And I go back to the tweet and the thought of a guy that played the position who was a fourth round draft pick who played in the NFL, and he can attest to this, and he laid it out perfectly, that you got to come in, you got to perform the same level as the guy that you replace for your teammates, coaches, job security. Yeah, it stinks. That's a situation SS came into. I've been there literally with the Browns as a rookie, as a mid-round pick. So how many other rookies you play your team and grow and get better, or you don't? Reps help. But he went on to add a little more context about the struggles and about judging. And again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, Stefanski or the Browns are doing right by this kid. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Sanders can play in the NFL, because I don't know. It's a bad spot. It's a bad situation. And you kind of feel bad for the kid or any quarterback that's put into that situation, period. You really do. Then I'm reading that his home was broken into during his debut. I mean, just not a good 24 to 48 hours for this kid. I mean, that's just the bottom line. But you also have to understand, if you are Stefanski and you have the quarterbacking room that you have, okay, let's just review. You've got Gabriel and you've got Sanders. Now let's call it for what it is. You've got Dylan Gabriel and you've got Sanders. You don't have Flacco anymore, and you don't have Deshaun Watson. He's not available. So that kind of tells you that Dylan Gabriel is a hit away, a concussion away, an injury away from seeing his ass on the sidelines or in the blue tent or off the field, and Sanders coming into play. And you mean to tell me in all that thinking, it doesn't dawn upon the organization, the GM, the friggin' head coach, that, yeah, you know what? We're playing with fire here. Maybe we should get this kid a little bit ready. Maybe he should get some reps in. Now, it'll be different this week because Gabriel's probably not going to clear concussion protocol, period. So Sanders is going to get his reps. But did I like what I saw yesterday from Shedeur Sanders? No. But do I like what I saw from the Cleveland Browns brass sticking this kid in unprepared? Absolutely not. And Rex Ryan, it seems as though Rex Ryan has his axe to grind when it comes to Shedeur Sanders. All right, I get it. The kid's on the sideline. He's sulking. I'm not going to sit there and say he's making it about him. He got embarrassed. We're waiting all this time for this kid to go out there, right? And we didn't see anything. And he was running for his life, and his offensive line wasn't helping him, and he was not prepared. And I don't know what these guys go through during the week of practice, if he's friggin' paying attention or he's falling asleep in meetings like Abdul Carter is. Thank God Kafka decides you're not going to start the game, you bust of a friggin' top 10 draft pick. I don't know. No one can speak to that. It's hard being a backup in the NFL because you never know when your number is going to be called. So it is your job to be prepared. But it's also the friggin' head coach and the organization and the coordinator's job to make sure that you are prepared. And they didn't. They didn't. Now everyone's going to come out and basically piss on this kid today. And you know what? Let them. Let them. Because no one's going to change their opinion. They're not. I don't know if this kid can really play. I don't. I honestly, I don't know. Can he play a little? Maybe he can. Can he play a lot? I don't know. Is he going to be a bust? Who knows? Nobody knows. But that's a bad spot all around yesterday. And it just goes to show you, again, the dysfunction of that franchise. If I'm a quarterback, I don't want to go there. Don't draft me. Don't draft me. Don't. Like, keep me away. Keep me away. Keep me away. I don't want to deal with it. Can't wait. Deserves a shot. Did you hear Shedeur never ran with first team in preseason? There's something off. There's something. Look, they obviously don't like the kid. For whatever the frig reason is, they don't like him. They don't like. Then get him out of Cleveland. Seriously. Get him out of Cleveland. It's ridiculous. And if his name was Joe Anderson or Joe Smith, I would feel the same way. Now, it's magnified because it's Deion Sanders' kid. But you can't sit there and make a blunt critique of this kid and his debut. It's not fair. Now, life's not fair. You're out there. Look, Jameis Winston got his reps, was a little rusty. Everyone thought he's going to let it fly, let it fly, let it fly. And then all I saw was the friggin' narrative. Well, so here you go. It's Winston with the pick late in the game. That wasn't on Jameis Winston. You know, the idiots out there that think it's on Jameis Winston have no friggin' clue. You're not watching friggin' football. That was Jalen Hyatt basically not running the proper route and giving up on the play. Another first-round friggin' bust by Joe Shane. But the narrative is somehow Jameis Winston, cue the interception, right? And Jameis Winston played his guts out yesterday for the Giants. He did. He played his guts out. He played hard. You know, he did what he had to do. And under those situation, the weather, the winds, they were running the football. Jordan Love made some plays. The backup came in, made some plays. The Packers are a better team. It's one of the reasons I said the Giants will keep it close, take the 7.5, whatever. But point is, we always look to find what works for us when we're pushing our narrative and our agenda. So it's very easy to sit there and say, Jameis was going to throw that pick late. It's very easy to say Darnold's going to throw that pick late. It's very easy to say Shedeur Sanders stinks as a quarterback. It's because some of these talking heads, they just want to push the agenda they want to push. They just want to push the agenda they want to push. And I think at this point, either Sanders goes or Stefanski goes. And it's crazy to even say this because you're talking about a 4th, 5th round draft pick. You're talking about a 4th or 5th round draft pick. And it's like crazy, right? It really is. It really is. And it's unfortunate. It is. It's unfortunate. But that's the state of the NFL that we live in. Pains me to say this. Eagles are head and shoulders above anyone else in the league. No. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Pressure of the moment for Darnold. Q. Higher the stakes, the smaller he plays. Yeah, but he still got him in field goal range. Let's be honest. He drove him down the field. You know, the knock on Darnold is he's going to have that bad pick, right? Looks like Q got a haircut, trim, cleaned up. A little bit, Joey. A little bit. Appreciate you catching on to that. I'm suspending myself for the first drive of Monday Night Football tonight. Raiders, Cowboys. What channel's NHL on? Laughing my you-know-what up. Wow. Then you're going to watch a little Monday Night Football. So let me just say this. We gave you the Eagles. We gave the Pats, Panthers, Bills, Texans, little squeamish, Vikings, Bears, we didn't touch. Giants, we gave you. Steelers, let me man up on the Steelers in Cincinnati. I flat out said Cincinnati was going to win the game outright, and I was wrong. But Here is the one game that I would like to. Oh, I also gave you the 49ers. Here's the one game from my prediction back in August that I had to listen to all you little friggin' trolls get on me. And I'm going to give some flowers, a little shine, a little kudos to Bronco ball, Bronco country, lest right. Yes, Miguel. Yes, yes, yes. The Denver friggin' Broncos. You guys were waiting for my Denver Broncos and my Bo Nix to spit the bit. I had people saying it was a horrible take. We had them outright on Friday. We have them winning the AFC West. We have Kansas City on the outside looking in. We have Bo Nix and Denver going to the Super Bowl. And I still stand behind that proclamation. How about Denver yesterday? Basically putting the nail in Kansas City's coffin. That was a great win. And if you go back to Friday, I said 24 points. They need to hold Kansas City under 24 points. I mentioned they have to do a good job defensively on third down. They didn't so much. But what they did do is they harassed Mahomes. They harassed Mahomes, and Mahomes had the bad pick, a couple sacks. He couldn't run. They didn't run the football. Hunt was stymied. Aside from maybe Kelsey having a couple plays here and there, Denver tried to stick to the run a little bit. Knicks played really well, efficient, made throws, key third downs. There were a couple bad calls in that one as well. You know, Denver's secondary worries me a little bit. They scare me a little bit. But that was a great win for the Denver Broncos. And I think it basically sealed Kansas City's fate. Denver's going to win the AFC West. Barring a absolute implosion of implosions, they're going to win the AFC West. They're 6-2 in the conference. They're 9-2 overall. The Chargers got blown out. Kansas City sitting at 5-5 or 5-6, pardon me, or 5-5, correct? 5-5. Yeah, they're 5-5. And the Raiders stink. But that's a big win for Kansas City. I thought Kansas City had one of the biggest wins in the weekend. And I also thought the Buffalo Bills. I thought the Buffalo Bills kind of silenced a lot of people. I really do. Because we were looking at that game on face value saying, all right, take the over. It's going to be a high-scoring game. What's Baker going to do? Josh Allen, what's wrong with Buffalo? Buffalo can't stop the run. Now, we saw it yesterday because they gave up 200 yards. But Josh Allen is just incredible. Just absolutely incredible. Look, in spite of throwing a couple picks and some decisions, they still put up 44. They still put up 44. That was a huge win by Buffalo. And yeah, the Eagles defensively, I'm going to give them credit. They played well last night. Sanders does that stupid spin with his back to the defense, worked in college, not in the NFL. Yeah, but again, we're nitpicking. I get it. You probably don't want to see it. And I don't like that either. It's like young receivers, when you're near the sticks, continue the route. I don't know why you spin around. I mean, these DBs, these linebackers, these edge rushers, to your point, they're so fast. You can't get away with that unless you're the kid from Detroit. That kid was unbelievable. Stefanski won a record Friday in the game and said he's done everything we've asked of him and more. Yeah, but that doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. Okay, what does that mean? Does that mean the kid's getting reps? Or did he get reps and he's just not prepared? Or he's just not that good? The whole situation's bizarre. That's at this point, it's like we can dissect it all day long, every day. It's just a bizarre situation. And if I'm a quarterback, I don't want to be there. If I'm a quarterback, I don't want to be there. It just, I don't know. I just think it's low bearing fruit. Look, the kid went 4 for 16 for 47 yards and a pick. His quarterback rating was 13. He was horrible. He was horrible. And the narrative was the Browns are setting this kid up to fail. Now, if Stefanski's saying he's doing everything that we ask of him, then again, and I'm only playing devil's advocate. If this kid goes out next weekend and he puts up those kind of numbers, what's going to be the defense? I'm just being fair. Like, what's the conversation? What's the narrative going to be? If he goes out and he's 6 for 19 for 45 yards and 2 picks against the Raiders, what are we going to say? And by the way, we're starting to see it in the NFL. J.J. McCarthy stinks, and that kid has gotten more reps than Sanders. They're still trying to build this kid up because Harbaugh was shining his shoes, Michigan. It's just a goofy situation going down there. Tom, and Summers Point, that's probably one of the biggest defensive efforts I've seen over the last several years against the Lions. Q, that's a big win for this team. I'm a little concerned about Lane Johnson's injury. Yeah, Liz Frank. 4 to 6 weeks, and maybe they shut him down. They get him ready for the playoffs. I think Cleveland is on Dylan Gabriel like the Bears were on Trubinsky. GMs need to be proven right. You might be right on that. This is turning into a Woosah Monday. No, I listen, just passionate. That's all. Just passionate. Just passionate. That's all. We got a little juice today. Broncos, #1 team in the NFL. I got to tell them, Michael. They don't want to listen. They don't want to listen. That's what I want to see right there. Not only Bronco ball, I want to get this on the record. Mark the tape called it in August, where all these other pundits making $100 million calling, and I'm sitting here with my fresh roast of coffee. The dog's half asleep after chasing squirrels in 20-degree weather. What are we doing? What are we doing? Denver in August called it. They're knocking off the Chiefs in the AFC West. Got to be a believer. A believer. A believer. Q, it sounds to me like you're manning up and saying KC doesn't make the playoffs. Grab your manscrape parts and call it. You what? What? I called it on Friday. You want me to call it right now on Monday? I'm calling it. The Chiefs will not be making the playoffs. They will be on the outside looking in. The fish of Luca Brasi, mark the tape. The Chiefs are done. They're cooked. They will not make the playoffs. They're not making the playoffs. How's that? How's that? How many times has Ghost marked the tape? Listen, here's the problem. You guys get on me when I'm wrong, which is a lot. And that's fair. I can take it. I have thick skin. I'm not hiding into a bunker. There's no bad reception. I'm not throwing Johnson rods. I'm not throwing gavels. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not doing any of that. Okay? So when I'm wrong, I man up. Hence the Man Up Monday. I take accountability. I run towards the fire. Okay? But when I'm right, can I get a little credit? I mean, that's all I'm saying. The Chiefs 7-game streak. Oh, watch they be like 5-7, and then they win. They win 5 straight, right? 10-7, and they just backdoor their way in. They go on a run. They win the Super Bowl again. They're in trouble, man. They're in trouble. I cooked them, yeah. But again, are you watching? You watching the same thing I am? Like, that was the litmus test. I'm going to tell you something. Yesterday showed us a couple things in the NFL. The pretenders and the contenders. Like, which teams do we really sit there and say, okay, we're ready? I still think the Lions are a playoff team. I do. The Rams, playoff team, very good defense, exceptional defense. Seattle is going to be a playoff team. The 49ers, the team I also told you was going to win 10 games, man, thank you very much, put up 41 yesterday. By the way, Brissett's 47 completions, crazy, right? 462 yards, bye-bye, Kyler Murray. You know, the Ravens, as Lloyd said, they're about to go on a run. But the Denver game was more about Denver. Everyone was waiting to see, okay, Denver's not really an impressive team. Well, let's go back now, right? So they lost to the Colts and the Chargers on the road in back-to-back weeks, and both those games came down to field goals. They took care of Cincinnati. They went on the road, and they were down, 14 late against the Eagles, and they beat them. They had an ugly game against the Jets. You're going to have that. They were down 19 in the fourth against my Giants and beat them. I mean, that game of the year. They put up 44 against Dallas. They had a gut check win against the Texans. They won an ugly game against the Raiders. So now everyone's looking at the Denver Broncos, and we were all doing it. Let's just call it for what it is. You know, the quarterback's regressing. The Sean Payton have it. The play calling is stale. It's stagnant. They're not really running the football. They're kind of void of some weapons. We can't trust Bo Nix. Sean Payton doesn't trust them. But the defense is going to win some games. We're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Here you go, Kansas City. All I heard all week was it's Kansas City. AFC West, run of AFC West titles. As long as they have Andy Reid, Kelsey, and Mahomes, it's Kansas City. This is their game. They're going to remind everyone in the NFL why they are the Kansas City Chiefs. And what did Denver do? Their defense went out and they basically woodshed the Kansas City Chiefs. They did. They absolutely woodshed the Kansas City Chiefs. They took that game plan that Tampa did a couple years ago in the Super Bowl. And it's not like they got to Mahomes 1,000 times, but they got to him in pressure situations. They needed those sacks. They needed those hits, those hurries. They had to knock him off the spot. And their run defense was outstanding. It was absolutely outstanding. You don't hold Kansas City to 19 points. You don't. You just don't. And I told you also, too, you got to keep them locked in on third down. They were 5-13. Conversely, Denver was 7-15, 50%. So that game, to me, was showing you that Denver's arrived. Denver has arrived. It doesn't have to be sexy. It doesn't have to be pretty, but they're 9-2. They're 6-0 at home, and they're winning games. And they're finding ways to win. That's the other thing. Like, go back and look at that game yesterday. I haven't even mentioned Bo Nix in that last drive. How many guys are watching that game yesterday saying, this kid's not going to get it done? It's not going to happen. So what does he do? He promptly gets the ball back with 2:59 and goes 10 plays and sets up a long field goal. That is as clutch as they come. This kid has the most fourth quarter quarterback comebacks, I think, first 2 years than any quarterback in NFL history. I mean, he slings it to the kid Franklin. That reminds me of a Clifford Franklin, unnecessary roughness. You never know if this kid's going to catch the ball or make a great catch. That drive was Bo Nix growing up. That's what it was. 5-yard out, 10-yard, here we go. Get the penalty, incompletion, 20-yard chunk play, 5-yard run, 5-yard pass, 2-yard run, 32-yarder, fresh set of downs, field goal, see you, good night, drive safely. That is a coming-of-age moment for the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix. That's all that was. Huge. That's a huge moment. That is a huge moment. And if you're a Broncos fan, enjoy it. All right, a lot of comments coming in. We'll keep it rolling. Quick timeout. Don't forget, we're powered by our good friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee, Three Brooks Bourbon, Get Ready with Tea, Jersey Shore Breaks, and our good friends at Play It Again Sports. All right, we got a lot of comments coming in on this Monday. Oh, my goodness. And some of you guys, I'm giving you flowers, and you still want to get on me. All right, quick timeout. We'll come back on the other side. All right, 10 past 5 o'clock hour on a Monday edition of On Q, a Man Up Monday, as we like to say. A lot of comments coming in. Let me read them off. Yeah, I got Mike in Ohio chimes in. Q, I was listening to Ohio Sports Talk today, and they were actually lambasting Stefanski, but some of the hosts were actually ripping Sanders for not being prepared. Again, I feel as though it's going to be a nauseum with this stuff. It really is. It's just, listen, it's going to be a nauseum. And I'm not gonna pull a Rex Ryan. The kid was sitting there. He was upset. He had an opportunity, right? And this is how he's going to be remembered. His first game as a pro. It was horrible. So he's basically sitting. He's upset, and here we go. His head's in his hands. Now I know, and maybe this is the radio guy in me, which probably rubs people the wrong way. I'm a big believer in body language. It's the radio thing in me. Like I look at something, the body language is bad, right? It's bad. And that's again, you're going to look at it and you're going to sit there and say, well, you should have got up and you should have greeted the opposing players after the game. And he sat there on the bench after a loss. And then right away, what are we going to say? It's about him. It's about him. It's about him. That's what Rex Ryan said. Get over yourself. Like Rex Ryan, sometimes you need to shut up too, man. Because sometimes you do sound like a jackass. Sometimes you can just hear the venom coming out of your voice. I get it. You still want to coach. Not happening, brother. You're done. You're done being an NFL head coach. So it's easy for you to pile on and sit there and say this kid's all about him. Hey, man, maybe that's just who he is. Maybe that's just who he's an immature kid. Okay? So he'll mature. He'll grow up. There's greater tragedies in the world than actually just, pissing on this kid because he has a horrible performance in a game that he was not prepared to be in. So I don't know. I just get out of Cleveland, get rid of this coaching staff, do something. It's just a bad look all around. Denver 2 field goals away from being undefeated. Correct. They are. Now, you can also argue they shouldn't have lost, or they shouldn't have beaten the Eagles and definitely the Giants, but your point is well taken. It's a valid point. If we're going to sit there and look at other teams and say, you are what your record is, then you have to do that with Denver. You have to do it with New England. And if you want to dissect it, dissect it. Kansas City defense played pretty well yesterday. If the offense gets a rhythm, they will make their run. Just spoke if they have maybe one complete team win this season. Just can't bet against my homeboy. It's not about betting against him. This is what you guys have yet to really understand. And I say this with respect. This is not a knock on Kansas City. Kansas City has been a great team, a great franchise. They had their run. You are allowed to have a down year. You're allowed to have a down year. Yeah, they might come back and they might beat the Colts and the Cowboys and the Texans and the Chargers and the Titans. And then they play the Denver Broncos again and the Raiders. They might win 10 games. But they also are in a precarious spot right now because you got to do the math. You got to do the math. And right now, again, what are we looking at? Denver, New England, the Colts, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, the Chargers, Jacksonville, the Texans. Kansas City is on the outside looking in. They're on the outside looking in. So, yeah, it just could be a numbers game. I'm not completely counting them out. And I say they're cooked. When I say they're cooked, I don't believe they're making a run back to the Super Bowl. I just don't. I believe what happened last year against the Philadelphia Eagles broke this franchise, and they have not been able to get their bearings. They came out of the gate 0-2. Bad loss to the Chargers. Couldn't score anything against the Philadelphia Eagles. They really have, and to your point, they really haven't done anything offensively. 31 points or 28, they lost to Jacksonville. They put up 37 against a bad Baltimore team that can't stop anyone. And then they put up 28 against the Commanders that are mailing it in. Again, It's not about it's a great they had a great run, but sometimes it's just not your year, and you got to regroup and you got to rebuild, and that's okay. 2-minute break. What are you talking about? I was right here. Get out of here, drinking my coffee. I'm not allowed to take breaks. I'm going on for 2 straight hours, 10 hours, during the week. Other podcasts, calling the fights, doing the basketball. I can't take a breather. Jesus, God, man. Christ. By the way, you would know that was true in the radio business if the DJ's playing Stairway to Heaven. That is your, let me go to the men's room break. Or Bohemian Rhapsody. Kevin C. and Jackson chimes in, same old Giants Q. Yeah, what are you going to do? It is what it is, what it is, what it is, what it is. I think the Eagles, they've kind of, they've set the bar in the NFC East. And Washington's dealing with the Jaden Daniels injuries. The Giants are dealing with some injuries. They just fired their head coach, but they played hard yesterday on offense. Their defense, still no changes. Shea Bone's going to remain the defensive coordinator. That kid Banks making business decisions. Abdul Carter hasn't done diddly. He really hasn't. Then you got the Dallas Cowboys, and they're a mess as well. Let's be honest. It's been a bad NFC East for years, and the NFC has not really been that competitive. And the road should be fairly easy for the Philadelphia Eagles. Their stumbling block might be a Rams team. Their stumbling block might be if injuries start to mount. The Lane Johnson injury, it's a big one, but you want that injury now as opposed to, say, late December, getting ready for the playoffs. You can ill afford to lose a Smith, a Goddard, a Hurts, a Barkley, right? One of these defensive players. So injuries can take a toll on a team, and they've been relatively lucky, but they're also a product of a bad division and really a conference that are the Bears going in to Philly and beating the Eagles? No. Green Bay? No. Minnesota? No. Carolina? No. Tampa? I don't think so. I gave you the two teams that I thought can go into Philly and beat them. Seattle, but we still are kind of yippish with Sam Darnold, and the Rams. The Rams, I think, are the only team right now that are built to go into Philly, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the difference is if the Rams get home field advantage, then that is a different story. That's a different animal. That's a very different animal, and the landscape changes dramatically then, and all bets are off, right? That's the way I look at it. That's the way I look at it. And AFC, it's a different story, right? It's a different story. We heard coughing, so my man Lloyd Vance just popped up in the queue room, and we gotta fire him off in a second. We will pull him up. Mark and Wildford chimes in. I thought ultimately excellent defensive effort last night, Q. But to your point, I have no idea what the hell Sirianni was doing. All right, I don't know. Maybe he had a Three Brooks bourbon before he joined us. Maybe he had a little snifter there. Our friend Lloyd Vance, kind enough to join us, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football, SOR 1029 FM The Game, and joins me on a Monday edition of On Cue. What's going on, Lloyd? How are you, brother?
Doing great, man. We had some great games this weekend.
We did. Let's work our way back. Let's start with last night, that Sunday night game. And, everyone can talk about the horrible pass interference call where, look, Chris Collinsworth actually says on probably the chagrin of NBC and Mike Tirico in the NFL. But the Lions lost the game because Dan Campbell was coaching with his head up his ass. I mean, some of these fourth down calls made absolutely no sense. The fake punt down 3-0, not taking the 3, some of these incompletions on fourth down when they were running the ball with success. I thought Dan Campbell did not help out the Lions last night. He did not help out Jared Goff. And ultimately, it bit him in the ass because, as we mentioned on Friday, if you're going to be aggressive, that's one thing. But at what time, place are you going to be aggressive, right? And last night, I felt down early. I think it was 13-6. Personally, if they don't miss that extra point, it's 13-7. I believe you take the 3 there. He didn't do it, and ultimately everything kind of snowballed after that. So, how about the play calling last night and the aggressiveness of Dan Campbell? Did you just feel that's just who he is, or did you kind of take a little bit of a pregnant pause and like, all right, some of these calls are not good?
Q, he'll never learn. This is Dan Campbell. This is who he is, and he's not going to kick field goals. He's always going to be aggressive. And last night, he came back and bit him in the butt. They 0-5 on fourth downs. It was just too much, too many times, and they were not having success in it. 3-13 on third downs. The Lions were, and it's like, man, like what is going on with this guy? The game was tight, Q. The Eagles were not playing that great. They were in it the majority of the time, and why be overly aggressive? And then it just didn't work. And then he just kept doing it over and over again. And give the Eagles credit. Their defense stepped up when they needed to. And you talked about that play with Williams. That was huge. That was a dumb penalty, and then they missed the extra point. It just changed the whole script of the game.
Yeah, it did, and some of the play calling was very vanilla, and the Eagles did not have to do a ton. They didn't. By the way, I don't know if okay. So I just sorry, real quick. I just uh, NFL suspended Jamar Chase for spitting at Jalen Ramsey. Chase denied spitting at Ramsey. Delete the term. The video evidence was sufficient to warrant a suspension. We'll get into that in a moment. I apologize for that. So, and then Sirianni. Again, Sirianni turned around and, yeah, you know what? We're going to go for it on fourth down, deep in your own end. I mean, both these coaches last night had their heads up their fannies. It just did not make sense.
Yeah, their decision making was something to be desired for, Q. And we talked about this time of year. It's time to make adjustments in terms of the coaches, and the best ones do it, and they find ways to win games. Yes, the Eagles keep winning games, but it's like they're winning. But you're wondering if this is going to be something that they can maintain going into the playoffs and into the end of the season. So good win for them, but the offense is struggling. Jalen Hurts, 14-28, 135. He was sacked one time. He just enough. And then the Eagles are undisciplined as well, Q. 9 penalties in this game. And, they escaped with the victory because they killed the time of possession and they stopped the Lions on key plays.
How about the loss of Lane Johnson, 4 to 6 weeks?
That's huge, Q. And that starting offensive group that started game one, they've only been together one game. And it just shows you with this injury, the consistency problem that this offense has. Saquon is not running the ball effectively the way last year, 26 rushes last night, 83 yards. And he was struggling at points to move the pile. And they even got stuffed on the tush push. So, it's something that's going to be a factor. They did a good job in terms of protecting Hurts in terms of getting sacked. They only got sacked one time. He wasn't really pressured, but they're going to have some difficulty here. But the thing is, the Eagles have won all their big games, Q. And right now, if the playoffs started today, I was just writing this up. The Eagles, they would be in the number 1 seed and they would have the bye. And you can't fault that because they beat Kansas City, they beat the Rams, they beat Tampa Bay, Green Bay, and now Detroit.
Yeah, you mentioned the Rams. I mean, I was very high on Seattle. Sling and Sammy kind of breaking my heart over there. What else is new? But he still got him in position late. That's a tough field goal attempt, a tough to ask 61-yarder. But we've seen kickers make it. But the Rams, I believe the Rams are legit. Like I was not as high on the Rams as others were. To start the season, you said their defense was going to be a lot better than I was giving them credit for, and we've seen it. That is a team I still feel they're built to go into Philly and beat the Philadelphia Eagles. And on a night where Stafford really doesn't blow you away, their defense did the rest, and they turned over Seattle and Darnold multiple times. I look around the NFC and I'm starting to think to myself, okay, well, pretenders, contenders, the legit teams right now. Yeah, the Lions are a playoff team. Eagles are a playoff team. Seattle's a playoff team. The Rams are a playoff team. Then it's kind of like, after that. Do you believe right now the Rams, based on what we saw yesterday and what we've been seeing all season long, that they are built to go into Philadelphia and beat the Eagles?
They could, Q. And, last time they came here, it came down to that blocked field goal. And let's face it, they've decided Cardi, their kicker at the time, he was not doing very well. They've gone with Mevis in terms of their kicker, and they've solidified that position. So, yes, I think they could come into Philadelphia or anywhere and play very well in the playoffs. And Stafford's playing very efficient. Yesterday, he didn't have to do a whole lot because
Right.
that defense has some good teeth in terms of Fisk and Verse and the rest of those guys. They're doing a nice job in terms of shutting guys down. Now, they got a little conservative, I thought, in the second half after they got the lead, but they hung on and got the win, and they can run the football. They have two dynamic receivers, and that defense gets turnovers. So, yes, I think they can compete in the playoffs.
Well, kind of sticking with the Rams for a moment, you see the injury to Penix in Atlanta, and now that's another injury for this kid that's going to end the season. I think that's like 4 out of 5 years. I mean, it's crazy because they just don't have any rhyme or reason to what they're doing. They might be looking for a quarterback, but the Rams will get their first round draft pick. I mean, so think about that. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous to think. But what do you make of what's going on? In Atlanta right now, we talk about some of these franchises, the Jets, the Browns, the Giants, that have absolutely no clue what the hell they're doing. And then you look at the Atlanta Falcons, and you're drafting a kid that's injury prone. He's damaged goods, and now he's hurt one more time, and they're sitting at 3-7. And oh, by the way, that a horrible loss to my Carolina Panthers. Great win, by the way, by the P-Men. I mean, so where are you at right now with the 49ers? Or I'm sorry, with Atlanta.
Yeah, with Atlanta, we were talking about the good teams find a way to win and the bad teams find a way to lose. And that's the way they are. They had a good game from Bijan Robinson. He was running the ball downhill, and they were making plays despite Drake May being a little London being a little beat up, and their defense is opportunistic. They have Bates and they have some players back there. I like the two rookies that they drafted this year in terms of Pierce and the other young guy Walker. So they have some pieces there, but they just cannot finish games. And Penix, he's tentative with the football, Q. I think a lot has to do with that offensive line. He's kind of under pressure a lot, but you're not sure if he's the guy. And you're right, you're not going to get the answer this season because he has that knee injury, that bone bruise, and now you're going to have Cousins coming in, and they're a 3-17. So
Yeah.
their season's pretty much over. And it'll be interesting in the offseason what they do at that quarterback position.
Jacksonville and the 49ers put up points, got big wins, but their defense still stinks. Myles Garrett has 15 sacks. The Ravens have 15. Jacksonville has 15. Cincinnati has 14. The 49ers have 12. That's absolutely crazy when you think of his pace that we'll get into in a moment. But I thought that's a big win, very impressive win by Jacksonville. And look, the 49ers, I know they're banged up. I know they got a lot of injuries, but they still have some weapons, and Brock Purdy came back, and they, that offense didn't miss a beat. I mean, they really did not miss a beat. Brissett, played his guts out, but that's kind of an efficient game. 19-26, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns for Purdy, and they kept them upright.
Yeah, and I'll start with Jacksonville. You start with them, and good win for them. And they're showing that, maybe they do have some consistency, and they're a little bit tougher than we thought they were. And they had ATN and Lawrence playing pretty well. Tootin was running the ball as well. And on the other side of it, the Chargers are looking a little fraudish, Q. They only had 135 total yards, and Jacksonville took advantage of that, and they intercepted Herbert. So we'll see about them. The Niners, I do agree with you, getting right at the right time in the season. They do have a late bye, so that's going to help this team in terms of their health. But they came out against Arizona. They were dominant right off the bat, Q. Sky Moore had that huge kickoff return to start the game, and it just went from there. And McCaffrey's playing extremely well. He had 121 yards rushing, 3 TDs. And don't forget about Purdy coming back. He was efficient with the football, and he had his favorite target, Kittle, out there. So as long as their defense can hold up, yeah, I think they can sneak into the playoffs, and we'll see what happens.
The Vikings stink. I think this kid can't play, McCarthy. I don't think he's very good. I texted my buddy today and I said, Mac Jones incoming with Minnesota. They'll probably give him $100 million. But it goes to show you, like, I wrote off Bryce Young, and then the kid throws for 400 yards, right? Darnold's stock kind of takes a nosedive. Allen's goes up. Stafford jumps to the favor. And I guess my point is, I can't figure out the quarterbacking play at all in the NFL, even when it comes to the guys that we think we can trust and we know we have something in there. But you look at McCarthy in Minnesota, I just don't think he's the answer, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, Q, last year we know there were so many quarterbacks taken in the first round. I think it was like 5 or 6 of them. And he was in that mix. He got injured. And I know you and I talked last week. And I was like, well, he's only started a handful of games,
Yep.
like 4 or 5 games, give him some time. But I watched a lot of that game, and he was just tentative in the pocket, missed a lot of throws. I mean, Jefferson was beside himself because he was open, and
Yep.
McCarthy was throwing the ball wide, throwing it high. And, I watched a lot of him at Michigan. He's not a thrower of the football. He's a pretty good dual threat guy. And maybe if they get Jones going, but there's too many weapons on the Vikings in terms of receivers with Addison, Naylor, and Jefferson. They have a good tight end, Hawkinson. He needs to be doing more. So, the Bears let him hang around, and it ended up the Bears pulled it out. What's that, 7, 8 straight wins for them? So
Yeah.
it's they're looking like a team that could compete. And you talk about the other side quarterbacks from last year. Caleb Williams, I got to start giving him his props. 5-1 in one score less games. So yeah, the Bears are playing well, and the Vikings are going the other way.
And ever since the Pope declared he was a Chicago fan, the Bears are winning some games of higher power. Zach chimes in, Q, I think it's time for Andy Reid to retire. That's a chance. By the way, that's a Kansas City fan. That's KC on X, and he. I think part of me thinks it might be one of our contemporaries, Mister Neff, is a troll. I'm just going to leave it right there. I don't know because I'm watching his feed. What are you going to do this right now with Andy Reid? Like it's ending the way it was in Philadelphia. I think that's ridiculous. I think Kansas City. Look, they might be on the outside looking in. I thought that game was more about Denver. Bo Nix, I thought he grew up that drive. That was one of the games that you and I went back and forth. I told you I loved Kansas City last year, but I don't love them this year. I love Denver winning the AFC West. We already know the listeners don't need to hear it anymore. But to me, yesterday was more about the Denver Broncos growing up and kind of saying, we are legit. Here's our defense. It's okay if our offense is eh. And then I think Kansas City is still a flawed team. Now, can they go on a run? Sure. But I just don't see them getting back to the Super Bowl this year. I really don't.
Yes, Q, and every time I watch Kansas City, I think of you because we talked about our beginning season preview. You came right out and said this team is not going to make the playoffs, and I was like, well, you got Reed, you got Mahomes, and they'll always find a way. But at key positions, they are looking very old, and they just are deficient as well. Q, and in particularly on the offensive line, Jawan Taylor. I don't know why they keep putting him out there. He's extremely bad right tackle, and he has
Yep.
penalties, and they can't run behind him. His protection's not good, so they need to fix something there. And in terms of Andy Reid, I don't think he's lost his fastball. Let's face it, KC has won this division every season since 2015. So yeah, you think that this is probably a down season. They're probably going to have to retool this thing. They obviously have the quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, but they got to find some weapons around him. Rashee Rice is inconsistent. They're not running the ball with any authority. They had Kareem Hunt out there, and he was trying to do some work, but they weren't moving the pile. And then defensively, they're getting aged quickly. Jones is not making those plays he once did. And also, their payroll is extremely high. And that's something, Q, you got to watch going into the offseason where they may have to get rid of some of these veterans they're paying a lot of money to.
This whole situation in Cleveland, I think there's so many layers to unpack and not enough time to unpack. And I know Cam Newton of Delete That Stefanski is, sabotaging this kid. And I retweeted what Luke McCown wrote about the backup quarterback and getting the reps. Then you get Rex Ryan coming out and saying what he says. I don't even know where to begin with this. I think it's a horrible situation. The optics are bad. Then the kid's, home gets broken into. It's pretty clear that whatever's going on in Cleveland, if you want to keep Gabriel and or Shedeur Sanders, under no circumstances can you keep this head coach. It's just you just can't. There's not full transparency. It's coy. It's in one breath. The kid's doing everything we ask, and the next he's not getting the reps. I mean, you understand this as much as I do covering the NFL, and I know you can speak a little more to it. Backup quarterbacks. You got to back up. This kid's backing up Dylan Gabriel. That tells you right there. Gabriel's a hit away, a concussion away from this kid having to, grab his helmet, get off the sideline, and get on the field. So whether he's getting reps or not, whether he's prepared or not, it's just a horrible situation. It's a laughable situation right now in Cleveland. It really is, because they're a bad football team. They're a bad franchise. And I feel as though any quarterback that goes there is going to get let down.
Yeah, the excitement was there, Q, when he went into the game, and Gabriel unfortunately gets the concussion, and the fans are cheering and everything. And the Ravens, let's face it, they were trying to hand this game to the Browns. And Shedeur comes in there. He did not play very well, quite frankly. 4-16, that's 25%. And he did have one nice throw down the field to Judy. He ended up with 47 yards and one interception, had a fumble, 2 sacks. He had that bad intentional grounding. But obviously, you say, okay, he's a rookie. He's coming in a tough situation against a Ravens team that's improving. That's won now 4 straight games.
Yep.
And he just didn't get it done. So I'd say give him a week to kind of prepare as a starter, see what he can do. As you said, Cleveland's probably not, they're not going anywhere. And also their schedule could be favorable in terms of him getting his opportunity.
Raiders coming up.
Yeah, they're at the Raiders. That'd be a good spot for them. They have San Francisco. We'll see about there. Tennessee, that could be a game where they could compete. They're at Chicago, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and then at Cincinnati. So some of those teams. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, to Vince's comment, then question for Lloyd. We understand a lot of backups don't get reps. Is it fair to say that the difference between winning and losing organizations, next man up, is the NFL way of preparing? So I don't know. Is this kid falling asleep in a meeting like Abdul Carter's? I don't know. Unless we are there, we're not going to get every single solitary detail and full transparency and honesty. We're not. We're just not. If I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, I want the season to end. I just want the season to end right now, because I can't deal with this stuff. It doesn't even matter. Even if this kid goes out and spits the bit against the Raiders and they go back to Gabriel and then he struggles, you really think they're going to go back to Sanders? No, they're going to keep playing Gabriel. So I don't know if this is spite. I don't know what the hell's going on, but overall, it's just a poorly run franchise right now. And it has been for a long time.
Yeah, that's a great term, because yes, they are poorly run. There's been some malfeasance in terms of the development of quarterbacks there. You've seen the litany of quarterbacks that have started games for them.
And he's a backup, so
right.
he's not going to get a lot of reps.
Yeah, he was as prepared as he could be to get in there, and I've been at NFL practices, and I remember like Donovan McNabb would take the majority of the snaps, and then maybe AJ Feely would come in and maybe get, 3 or 4, plays, and that's about it. They had to get the starter ready for that week, and that's the most important things for those guys to be on the same page with him. And obviously, as you said, they like Gabriel. He's an amicable guy. He's a locker room guy. He's never going to light the world on fire. In terms of his performance, and I do think Stefanski, Shedeur is not his guy. You can clearly see this. He
all know that.
He just so that's why he's just like whatever. Yeah, maybe we'll see how everything turns out. Maybe he'll start for the Raiders, maybe not. But he got his chance and he didn't look good. But I think he's going to get some more opportunities there. In the NQ, I do agree with you. Jimmy Haslam, the owner there, is going to have to blow this thing up. It may be a situation where Barry gets to stay and Stefanski goes, but that's the way I would look at it right now. But I think Stefanski is coaching his last games for Cleveland.
Question for Lloyd. Does he know what the heck is going on with Joe Mixon's phantom foot injury? Asking for my fantasy team. That's all about the fantasy team. That was by the way, that's a Texans won again, huh?
Yeah, they've won now 2 in a row, and they're 5-5. They're getting back in the mix. And yeah, everybody I talked to said that I believe he had like a Jones fracture or something, like one of those small bones in his foot. And it takes a long time to heal from that. I still remember Keith Byers in college. He broke his foot similarly, and it just took him like years to come back from it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't anticipate Mixon coming back this season, and they moved ahead with Woody Marks there, and they also have Chubb. So, good win for them, and they got some prove it games coming up. They're kind of in the playoff mix as well.
Uh, I don't want to talk or spend too much time on the Giants, but it showed you again the poor drafting by Shane with Winston throwing the pick, which was not on him. It was on Jalen Hyatt. But what bothers me the most is that if we're talking about players having an opportunity to make plays and get it on film, tryout, so to speak, then Mike Kafka's tryout yesterday, I love the fact that they played hard, but he also turns around and for some reason he throws a challenge flag on a challenge that you knew they weren't going to win. And then he doesn't throw a challenge flag on a challenge they were going to win because he was fearful that he's going to burn through that. So, like, if you're kind of rating him or grading him, even on a curve, I say like C, but it didn't instill a lot of confidence to me. I'm still, for the life of me, don't understand why the defensive coordinator still has a job today. That's the most alarming thing. Like, why is this man still employed? And I've had people come in to me and say, well, at this point, who are you gonna replace him with? Well, they fired the head coach and they replaced him with the coordinator. I guess, like I said, I thought he handled himself well. Kafka did during the week. I would have liked to saw them maybe be a little more aggressive with the play calling with Jameis Winston, but again, he didn't have a substantial amount of weapons. They tried to go with the run. They hung in there. So yeah, I wasn't blown away by Kafka. And then on the flip side, Lloyd, Packers, they needed that win, man. That would have been a horrible loss for Green Bay if they would have lost to the Giants yesterday.
Q, yeah, I had my eye on this one because I'm helping one of my friends with his picks, and I told him, I said, "Oh, take the Packers," and the Packers were trying to give this game away, And Kafka, to his credit, Q, he was aggressive, and Winston kept converting those third downs, those fourth downs, and the Packers for a long time was like, "Oh, they may lose this game," and they finally found the special sauce at the end, and Christian Watson made some nice plays for them. They had to play without Jacobs, who went out with that knee injury, and the backup running back came in. But yeah, I thought the Giants were scrappy, and in the end, yeah, why not just start a new one? Because the defense has been their problem all season.
It's been horrible.
Yeah, they can't make stops. Obviously, the offense is different when they have Dart in there, and they didn't have him. But I thought Jameis acquitted himself well, except for that late interception. But yeah, you could clearly see the receiver stopped on that route, and good win for the Packers. They move on. They're 6-3-1, but they're so inconsistent. Q, you're just not sure who they really are, and if the playoffs started today, they'd be the 6th seed, and I think they may be one and done in the playoffs because Love. Let's face it, he's got to improve because he's making too many mistakes, missing a lot of passes.
Going back real quick, the AFC, when you saw what Buffalo did yesterday, if we kind of, handicap the AFC at this moment, New England's still New England, right? They're 9-2. The Bills got a much needed win. They're 7-3. The Pats, by the way, have won 8 straight. Pittsburgh, you know how I feel about Pittsburgh, even though it's Cincinnati. And then you got the Colts, and then you got Denver. Now, if I said Denver, New England, and Buffalo, best team in the AFC, no disrespect to my Colts, who you taking?
Yeah, I'd have to say it's Denver right now, Q. The way that defense is playing, they lead the NFL in sacks, and Bonito has 9.5, and they're just getting pressure from a variety of places. They won yesterday without Surtain, which was very, big for them, and Mahomes just did not look comfortable. So a big win, quality win for them. The Broncos beat the Eagles. They beat Kansas City now. And then when you look at New England, you're just like, okay, who are they really beating? And yes, the season's been a turnaround, and Drake Mays looked pretty good for them, but it's not saying anything beating the Jets, and they have
No.
Cincinnati coming up. So yeah, if I had to handicap it, I'd say Denver, Indianapolis, who was on a bye this week, and then New England.
The Jets finally benched Justin Fields. We kind of knew that they're going to start Taylor. That's not a surprise. I mean, we're in the part of the schedule right now in the NFL where I think there are still some coaches coaching for their job. Now, let me throw you a couple scenarios. Give me a yay or nay, if you will,
Okay.
or let's say I'll give you the scenario and you tell me if he stays or he goes. Cincinnati right now, they're 3-7. They're a bad football team. They're dealing with the Burrow injury. Their defense still stinks. Zach Taylor, does he stay or go? He's going to make it through the season, but afterwards, is he fired or they're just going to chalk it up to a down year with injuries?
I think in the end, what Mike Brown, he's not going to want to pay a coach that he's given an extension to. So I think what they're going to do is Al Golden, the defensive coordinator, he may be one and done there. They'll get rid of him. Taylor will stay.
And let me pull the man real quick. Did you see the list of quarterbacks May has beaten? Yeah, I mean, Bryce Young, right? Josh Allen, Cam Ward, Gabriel, Penix, Baker, and then who's the kid with the Saints?
Tyler Shook.
Yeah. So let's say
Spencer Rattler. Yeah.
And he beat Tua.
Right.
And he lost to the Raiders to open the season. Well, they lost, and then they lost to the Steelers. So out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 wins, but see, they're still a really good team, and he's a great quarterback. Period. Like you can't fault who's on the schedule, but they've got Cincinnati coming up, the Giants, the Bills, the Ravens, the Jets, the Dolphins. I mean, hell, they're going to win. They might win 12 games.
Right. And look, they've already their biggest win, their signature win, was beating Buffalo on that Sunday Night Football game. So they have that in their back pocket. The Bills are chasing them. They do play late in the season, but the way New England's playing and the way the schedule shakes out, yes, they're probably going to host a playoff game, and the Bills are probably going to have to be a wild card.
Yeah, I mean, does Kansas City make the playoffs?
Q have been back and forth on this one, and looking at their schedule, it's going to be tough for them. They're 5-5, so right now they are on the outside looking at Jacksonville is ahead of them. So it's going to be contingent on Jacksonville kind of falling apart, but they have a huge game next week: Indianapolis, at Dallas, Houston, the Chargers, who I think could fall off, at Tennessee, Denver again, and then at the Raiders. So I'm not going to bury them just yet, but it's not looking good.
If they don't make the playoffs, you guys will never ever hear the end of it from me.
He's going to break his arm patting himself on the back, man. And you know what? Hey, that was a bold prediction, and right now you're looking
That's
correct,
the word,
man.
Bold. I've gotten stupid, horrible take as opposed to bold prediction. I think either the Pats.
Props, man.
Yeah, I think either the Pats or Colts will get beat first game in the playoffs. That could be the Colts. You're looking at Daniel Jones. They can run the football. The Patriots, because they're a young team and they haven't been there, but they got a coach that knows how to win. They got the right coach, right? I like this quarterback. I just think he's playing with a boatload of confidence, and man could be right. He can be 100% correct. But I can also say the same thing for maybe Seattle, Detroit, and the Eagles. They might be one and done.
Right. And everybody's thinking, okay, they're like the Dolphins, McDaniel's first season. They won all those games, and then they go into playoffs, and they lay that egg. So, we're going to have to see. But, with Travion Henderson stepping up, and they have Stevenson coming back from injury, you'd like to see some more production from their receivers. Mac Hollins is kind of stepping up for them. And defensively, no-namers like Tonga are doing a nice job, and they have Gonzalez. So, yeah, the Patriots they're a good story, but it's all about quarterback play in the playoffs, and he's going to have to step up his game. We know that because last year, Bo Nix, let's face it, young quarterback, you knew he's going to kind of struggle out there.
Aside from tonight's game, do you already have your game ball and lackey?
I do, man.
I'm going to say game ball. You got to give it to my guy, Bo Nix, right?
I went to it with another quarterback, Q.
Josh Allen.
That's right, Josh Allen. I mean, he was tremendous in the win against Tampa Bay. I heard you before I came on. Yes, he puts the Superman cape on, and he's going to have to do that. We'll see how they kind of get the receiver situation cleaned up there. But 19 of 30, 317 yards, 3 TDs. He did have the 2 interceptions, but he had 3 rushing touchdowns as well, and he just took that game over. So game ball.
Did the lackey go to a player or a coach?
I gave it to a player this time.
Was it a quarterback?
Yes.
Was it Justin Herbert?
No, that's a good one. Well, he spit the bit, but I had to, and his team came back, and I know you're like, oh, Lloyd, but I gave it to Sam Darnold. Those 4 interceptions.
Easy, man.
I know. 4 interceptions in a key divisional game.
I know. That's what he does.
He's got JSN, who's playing better than any receiver out there. Not bad on third down, 7 of 16 Seahawks were, but those turnovers were just killer. And then he had this strong comeback at the end, but he's got to play better. And everybody's saying, oh, there he is. Last year from the playoffs, same guy.
So depressing. All right, brother. What time are you on tonight?
We're going to do 8 o'clock tonight, and we're looking forward to it. We're going to do a lot of talk around the playoff picture the way it is today, and kind of what you and I were talking about, coaches on a hot seat, a lot going on, and we'll kind of preview the game tonight and get everybody ready for Week 12.
See, even the dog's whining when you said Sam Darnold. All right, we'll be tuning in as always. I know we'll talk later on the week. Don't forget, Lloyd Vance's Insider Football. Give him a follow on X at Lloyd Vance. SR 1029 FM The Game. Always appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
All right, Q. Talk to you.
All right, there you have it, my guy, Lloyd Vance. Quick timeout. We'll come back on the other side and wrap it up. All right, you got Monday Night Football tonight. As I mentioned, the Raiders and the Cowboys. So just as we kind of recap as we typically do, Jets and the Pats started us off on Thursday Night Football. Easy win for the Patriots. Horrible game yesterday in Spain. The Dolphins won again. The Commanders lost. Low-scoring affair, 16-13. Panthers, Bryce Young, 448 yards. They get the overtime win over the Falcons. How about the Panthers, right? I told you, Panthers are going to be a fringe playoff team. Tampa defensively had no answers for Buffalo. They were able to run the football against the Bills, who have one of the worst run defenses in the league. Texans got a nice win against a bad team. Bears, they won again. They're 7-3. Vikings are pretty much shot. I think they're going to look for another quarterback going forward. Jordan Love and the Giants, line was 7.5. Giants covered that. Winston played hard. Offense played hard. Defense, again, blew a lead late in the fourth quarter. What else is new? Cincinnati, just a bad season. Aaron Rodgers banged up that wrist. So that's something to watch for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Chargers, no showing against the Jags. That's a nice bounce back win for the Jags. Talked a lot about the Darnold game against the Rams, really struggled. The Rams are just a juggernaut of a team. I want to pull up the Rams' remaining schedule. The Rams have Tampa, the Panthers, the Cardinals, the Lions, Seattle, the Falcons, Cardinals. Wow. So, you're going to see they get through the Bucks. They should beat the Panthers, the Cardinals. Maybe they trip up against the Lions and or Seattle. Now, remember, they played Seattle yesterday. So familiarity, right? I don't think Darnold's going to turn it over 4 times in that game coming up in December. The Falcons are done the Cardinals. So even if you give them 3-4 wins, now you're looking at a team that is 11-6, 12-5. Is that going to be enough to get home field advantage throughout the playoffs? So it's always about checking out the schedule, getting teams at the right time to close out the season. The 49ers put up 41. Brissett yesterday, unbelievable. 47 of 67, 452, 2 touchdowns. But their defense didn't do anything. Nice game. Welcome back, Brock Purdy. Ravens, ugly game against the Browns. Ravens, we talked a lot about the Baltimore Ravens. And, we said, talk to us when they get to 500. Well, they were 1-5 and dead, and now they're 5-5 with the Jets, Cincinnati, the Steelers, Cincinnati coming up. They're going to go 3-4. They're going to get 9 wins. I think 10 gets you in the playoffs. 10 gets you in. So they got to keep this run going. They got to keep this run going. And I believe they will. And they might be a scary team. They got to clean up that defense, but you still got Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, got some weapons. Andrews, the tight end, had that great play on fourth and short. Baltimore is going to be a scary team. Denver, that is a gut check win for the Broncos at home and Bo Nix. And then the Eagles last night defensively against the Detroit Lions, doing a very good job and keeping that offense at bay. Colts and the Saints with bye weeks. Denver, I thought win of the weekend. Buffalo, very impressive as well. You got the Raiders and the Cowboys tonight. Dallas is laying 3.5. That's my look but don't touch game because I don't really care. We talked a little bit about some of those injuries, which we will get into a little more tomorrow on Q. Don't forget to definitely check us out on social media. You can follow along. Very easy to do at X on Rich Q and Q. IG, Rich Q and Q, TikTok, Rich Q and a Mike. Appreciate everyone keeping us locked in on a Lunes Manolo Mentiroso Man Up Monday. I did a lot of man up in today, but still not a bad weekend of picks as well. A little more college football and some hoops later on in the week. You got Monday Night Football. Enjoy it. Little NBA, little NHL. We'll start to talk a little hot stove baseball. We'll start to go in some of these power rankings midweek. New episode of Back Your Play will drop on Thursday, so check that out with Lloyd and myself on Apple, Spotify, and of course on iTunes as well. All right, you guys are fantastic. Thanks for keeping us locked in for an hour plus. Have a wonderful Sports Monday. Don't forget, we've been powered by our good friends over at Three Brooks Bourbon, fresh roasted coffee, get ready with tea, Jersey Shore breaks, and our wonderful friends over at Play It Again Sports. Have a good Sports Monday. As always, be safe, be sound. Thanks for tuning into this edition of On Q. As always, I'm Rich Quinones. Hasta luego, buen día.